The night Miles Keating took Hollow Mile, the rain had already been falling for hours. It was the kind of steady, fine mist that blurred the road ahead into a tunnel of gray, making distance impossible to judge. He was 3 hours behind schedule. Hartford had been a mess. Back-to-back meetings, traffic snarled from an accident on the interstate. He told himself that if he just cut through the rural backroads, he could shave off time. His phone sat on the passenger seat, the blue glow of the GPS the only real light besides the headlights. Turn left onto County Road 41 in 1.3 miles, the synthetic voice said. He checked the clock, 11:12 p.m. The last gas station had been 20 miles back. He was tired, the caffeine from his afternoon coffee long gone, and the road had taken on that hypnotic rhythm where the white lines almost seemed to slide toward him instead of the other way around. The trees closed in as he drove, their wet limbs drooping low, heavy with water. Every so often the wind would push the branches just enough to brush the roof of the car, making a muted shh that set his teeth on edge. Miles hadn't told anyone about this route change. Nora, his sister, would have rolled her eyes if she knew. "You're not some backwoods explorer," she'd have said. "Stick to the GPS and the highways." But the GPS had led him here, and if it could get him home faster, why not? At least that had been his reasoning before he saw the road sign. It came into view suddenly, leaning at an angle in the beam of his headlights. The green paint was chipped, the reflective coating mostly dulled with age. The words were hard to make out through the rain, but he caught them as he passed. Hollow Mile Road. He almost smiled. There was something melodramatic about it, like a bad horror movie title. But then the GPS chimed again. Proceed on Hollow Mile Road for 1.2 miles. The screen flickered, then the map froze completely. He tapped the screen with one finger, but the interface was unresponsive. The blue triangle showing his location stayed fixed in place while the rain kept coming down, the road ahead bending gently left, then right, then straight again. The first flicker in his peripheral vision made him flinch. Just a pale blot in the tree-line, gone as soon as he turned his head. He slowed a little. He wasn't a jumpy driver, but rural roads at night had a way of making every shadow into something alive. A minute later, another sign appeared, same size, same green paint, Hollow Mile Road. That didn't make sense. He couldn't have driven far enough to reach another road sign, and besides, there'd been no intersecting road to justify a new one. This one, too, leaned slightly. Miles kept driving. By the time he passed a third Hollow Mile sign, the first drop of unease had landed in his stomach. Maybe there'd been a loop, a hidden curve that bent back on itself. But the road hadn't felt like it doubled anywhere. The trees looked the same, sure, but that was just rural Connecticut in the rain. Miles and miles of identical forest. The clock now read 11:24. He should have been nearly through the road by now, but there was still no sign of County Road 41's end. The GPS screen suddenly went black. No warning chime, no battery low alert, just dead. Miles muttered, "Great," and glanced at the charger cable, still plugged in. The phone's black screen reflected a dim, shifting movement from outside. When he looked up, his headlights illuminated a figure far ahead on the shoulder. It stood still, pale in the rain, turned toward him. For half a second he thought it was a hitchhiker, maybe someone in a rain poncho, but the closer he got, the more the proportions looked wrong. The legs seemed too long, the head slightly tilted in a way that didn't suggest fatigue, but listening. He blinked and it was gone. No, not gone, just not there anymore. His high beams caught only wet road and trees. Miles gripped the wheel tighter. His heartbeat ticked up, but he told himself it could have been a trick of the rain, or a mailbox, or even an animal. He drove on. At 11:31, he passed the Hollow Mile sign again. This time, the letters looked warped, almost like they'd been drawn by hand in sloppy imitation of the real font. Miles felt something crawl up the back of his neck. It was time to turn around. He slowed, scanning for a driveway or side road, but the shoulder was too narrow to make a three-point turn without dipping into the ditch. He drove another half-mile before he spotted a gravel clearing on the left. He pulled in, shifted into reverse, and swung the wheel. When his headlights swept across the trees, something moved between them. A blur, tall, impossibly thin, sliding behind the trunks without a sound. Miles didn't stop to stare. He finished the turn and headed back the way he came. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. The rain softened. He began to believe he'd overreacted, that the repetition of the signs was some weird local quirk. Then his stomach dropped. Another hollow mile sign stood ahead, on this side of the road. He slowed, staring. This one wasn't metal. The post was wood, slick with rain, and the sign face was just a piece of warped board with the letters burned into it.
No reflectivity.
No highway regulation. Just watching him as he passed. Miles pressed harder on the gas. His eyes flicked constantly between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Every time he looked up at the glass, he half expected to see headlights behind him. But the road was empty in both directions. The clearing from before never appeared. Neither did the curve with the drooping oak or the cracked patch of asphalt near the double yellow lines. It was as if Hollow Mile was rearranging. The air in the car felt heavier, the kind of thick, humid stillness that came before a summer thunderstorm. The heater fan whined in protest as he cranked it, trying to push back a sudden chill. A sound broke through, faint but distinct, from the back seat. A slow, wet inhale. Miles's breath caught in his throat. He didn't turn around. His peripheral vision caught only darkness in the back. But the sound came again, closer to his left ear. He reached up and flipped the rearview mirror down so it faced the dash. His pulse pounded so hard it felt like his vision pulsed with it. The rain picked up, drumming on the roof. The next inhale was so close it could have been right behind his headrest. Miles didn't remember deciding to speak. The words just left his mouth, tight and trembling. "Who's back there?" No answer. Only the hum of the tires on wet pavement and the occasional hiss of branches sliding over the roof. He forced himself to check the mirror again. It still faced the dash, but the fear that something could be leaning between the seats, just outside his peripheral vision, was unbearable. He jerked it back into place. Empty back seat. He exhaled shakily, almost laughing at himself, until he realized something worse. The rear windshield was black. Not tinted, not reflecting. Just black, like the glass had been painted over. Even the faint glare from the headlights should have shown the silver gleam of wet pavement stretching behind him. But there was nothing. The urge to pull over fought with the certainty that pulling over was the worst thing he could do. The road began to change. It sloped downward now, subtly at first, then with a more pronounced grade. The trees thinned, and patches of bare earth appeared between them, slick with rain. The air smelled different, less like wet leaves, more like something metallic and sharp, like a struck match. A sign appeared ahead, and his heart kicked hard. Hollow Mile Road. But this time the letters were reversed, as if the sign had been meant to be read in a mirror. He passed it doing 50. The rain let up just enough for his high beams to punch farther into the dark. And that's when he saw it. A ditch running alongside the road, half choked with weeds. Something crouched in it. At first it looked like a man, folded down on hands and knees, head bent low. Then the head tilted up, and Miles's stomach turned over. It wasn't a man's face. It was too long, the mouth stretching nearly ear to ear, the eyes reflecting light like an animal's. The thing didn't move as the car passed. It only followed him with its gaze, the reflection in its eyes shrinking in the mirror until it was gone. Miles gripped the wheel so hard his hands ached. He told himself it could have been a deer, an injured one maybe, but the lie sat hollow in his mind. The road dipped again, sharper this time. The guardrails appeared, rusted, dented in places, but the drop beyond them was impossible to see. The white line on the shoulder flickered under his headlights like it was painted on water. A single shape appeared ahead, planted in the center of the road. Not moving. Miles slowed but didn't stop. The shape resolved into a person. No, not exactly a person. Tall, with limbs that seemed slightly too long and shoulders hunched in an unnatural curve. It wore something pale that clung to its frame, plastered by rain. He flashed his brights. The figure didn't flinch. At 30 feet, it stepped aside in one smooth movement and turned its head toward the car. There was no face, only a featureless blur where one should have been, as though his eyes couldn't hold the details. Miles hit the gas. The figure stayed in the periphery as he passed, turning slowly to watch him go. When he glanced in the mirror, the rear windshield was still pitch black. But he could feel, not see, feel, that something was keeping pace just outside the beam of his taillights. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. There was no sign of the county road, no intersecting streets, no houses. The dashboard clock still read 11:31. A bend in the road came up, but when he steered into it, the curve just kept going. The same tree on the inside shoulder repeated over and over. A white scar on its bark, a dead branch jutting like a skeletal arm. The fourth time it appeared, Miles's hands began to shake. He braked hard, tires skidding on the wet asphalt, and the car came to rest in dead silence except for the rain. For a moment he dared to believe he'd stopped the cycle. Then something knocked once, sharp and deliberate, on the driver's side window. Miles's breath clouded the glass. He didn't look right away. The knock came again, softer this time, almost polite. He turned his head in one sharp motion. Nothing was there. Only the faint rivulets of rainwater crawling down the window, catching the light from his dashboard. He eased the car back into gear, foot trembling on the gas. The tires hissed as they rolled forward. The forest pressed in tighter. Branches arched overhead, their tips meeting to form a tunnel. Halfway through, he heard it, a second set of tires on wet pavement, matching his speed. He looked in the side mirror. No headlights, no car, but the sound stayed, steady as a shadow. The tunnel opened, and the sound stopped. Ahead, in the low beam of his lights, the road forked. No signs, no indication which way led out. He slowed to a crawl, trying to choose, when something stepped into the fork from the left. It was human enough in outline, but smaller, maybe 5 feet tall, wearing soaked clothes that clung to its frame. Its head tilted forward, chin nearly to chest, as if it were studying the road. Then, slowly, it raised its face to him. This one had a mouth. It was stretched into a wide, unblinking smile, lips pale, teeth showing too evenly, too perfectly. The smile didn't move, even when its eyes began to water from the rain. Miles turned the wheel toward the right fork without thinking and accelerated. In the corner of his eye, the smiling thing didn't chase, but its head turned unnaturally far to watch him go, the grin still fixed in place. The right fork narrowed almost immediately. The pavement crumbled into patches of gravel. He should have been relieved. Gravel meant he was near a main road or at least a driveway, but his headlights caught nothing ahead except more trees. The clock on the dash flickered. The rain stopped, not faded, stopped, as if a switch had been thrown. The sudden silence pressed against his ears. He slowed, listening.
No insects.
No wind, just the faint hum of his engine. Then footsteps, not running, not dragging, just walking somewhere in the dark ahead. He braked to a stop. His hands shook on the wheel. The footsteps drew closer, and Miles realized something that hollowed him out completely. They weren't on the gravel. They were on pavement, which meant they were coming from behind the car. He didn't turn around. The footsteps reached the driver's side door and stopped. A pause. Then, a low voice, calm and conversational, said, "You missed your turn." When Miles finally turned, he saw the police found his car the next afternoon, parked on a dirt turnout a few miles from the nearest main road. The keys were still in the ignition. The doors were unlocked. The inside smelled faintly of rain and something metallic. There was no sign of Miles Keating. The local papers mentioned Hollow Mile only once, in a passing line about unfamiliar rural roads and poor weather conditions. No one in town could agree on where exactly Hollow Mile was, or if it had ever existed at all.